Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're here with another sit down video because I wanted to talk about my pregnancy journey and birth story with my daughter Katherine. I'm going to try to do this without crying, but the truth is it was a really traumatic, emotional experience. Don't get me wrong, I'm so grateful for the journey. I'm so grateful for all that I've learned. But it took a toll on me, that's for sure. Now, why am I filming this video when she's almost 2? Because I'm late to the YouTube gang and I still want to have this here so I can look back on it and reflect. So, my pregnancy with Katherine was planned. We were trying, so us finding out that we were pregnant was great news. We were so excited. I was so happy to be a first-time mom. I've wanted to be a mother forever, and now here I am pregnant and so ready, so excited for the journey. I found out I was pregnant in July of 2019. So I found out I was pregnant. I told my husband the same morning. Like I said, we had been trying, so I already had like a way that I was gonna tell him. So I did that the same morning and it was just such a good day. I remember being so happy. I just cried like off and on the whole day. I had already been taking prenatals because for the third time now, I'm gonna say that we were trying. So I had already been taking prenatals and I had already been looking for doctors. So because we were new to the area, so I called the doctor right away and scheduled an appointment. The first appointment was for like early mid-August. So in the meantime, I was just taking my prenatals and just being happy, being ready for what the journey was gonna bring. So I had my first doctor's appointment in August and they, run a ton of blood work. And so I already knew from a previous experience that I was Rh negative. But when I got my blood work done at that first appointment, it showed that I had a positive blood type. So I know that there's a very small population of people who, I guess when they're pregnant and Rh negative, the blood work can reflect a switch, like a positive, but I just took it at face value. I wasn't my own advocate and they said it was positive, so I accepted that it was positive. And so they didn't schedule me to receive a RhoGAM shot, and I'm still excited. I don't know that that should be a red flag. I'm just really, really happy to be pregnant. So I experienced all the symptoms during pregnancy. The first trimester was rough for me. Very fatigued, very nauseous, couldn't keep anything down. Well, I mean, it stayed down, but it just wasn't a good feeling. Being morning sickness, which as you guys probably know is not just in the morning, is rough. So if I was awake, I was nauseous and I would just try to sleep it off because every time I was awake, I felt so sick. And I was literally sick from week 6 to week 14. So for 6 weeks straight, crazy food aversions. The only thing I could eat was carbs. That was the only thing that would settle my stomach, and that was really tough. But comes with the territory. I was expecting it. So first trimester goes like that. Second trimester was pretty normal. You feel first kicks, you start to get a little bump, and that was sort of a very typical boring but boring is good when you're pregnant, second trimester. Things sort of took a scary turn when I was 24 weeks pregnant. When I was 24 weeks pregnant, I lost my mucus plug. And insert definition here. I lost my mucus plug and immediately I was terrified. From what I know about pregnancy, I know it's way too early to go into labor, and I got really, really nervous. I called my doctor and she told me to go to the ER. So I went to the ER and they examined me. They checked out Katherine's, heart rate and my vitals, and everything otherwise was fine and was normal. But they gave me a steroid shot. And then the steroid shot was so that if she was born early, I guess her lungs would have a little extra support. So that was like a 2-dose shot. I had to go back the next day for the second round. But at 24 weeks pregnant, they said, you were threatened with preterm labor, and you should, to err on the side of caution, prepare to deliver early. So at 24, 25 weeks, we were packing a hospital bag. We were preparing for her to come early. I'm nonstop just reading all the terrible things that could happen. I remember my church prayed for me. It was just a whole ordeal, and it really shook me to my core. It was, I think, the first time in that pregnancy that I thought, okay, things could go really wrong. And I started to be really, really careful. Pulling back at work wasn't really an option, so I just tried to make sure that my mindset was ready for early delivery. God willing, we wouldn't have to experience it, but just the doctor saying be ready was scary enough. Packing a hospital bag that early on was really, really an emotional thing for me. So after that scare of preterm labor, things got real. Things got real, and things got real quick. From that, next was they said my iron was low, and they said that I had anemia of pregnancy, and I had already done the glucose test, and they said, let me tell you about that glucose test. Okay, so I go for my anatomy scan. Now I'm jumping back to 20 weeks. I go for my anatomy scan at 20 weeks, and that was looped in with my 1-hour glucose. Bad idea. Because after I had to drink that vile, disgusting sugar drink, now I'm laying down, and they're doing the anatomy scan, so they're poking at my belly, and it was just not good. So I threw up. And when you throw up while taking your glucose test, you can't get the blood work done. You have to come back, drink it again, wait an hour, and test. So I did that. I had to go back, drink it again, and test. And I failed the glucose test so bad that they didn't even do the 3-hour glucose test after that. They said, your numbers are so bad that we're just diagnosing you with gestational diabetes, and you need to meet with a nutritionist and a supupidist and a supupidist and a jubutidist. So I meet with all the ists, and sort of get the rundown on gestational diabetes and what that looks like. So I had to manage my diet, prick my finger 4 times a day. I had to I couldn't work out. You know, a lot of people say, like, if you have gestational diabetes and you're eating healthy and you're working out, they sort of balance each other out and you're fine. But I couldn't work out because I was at risk for preterm labor, so I was put on pelvic rest, and they told me, you know, other than your normal, like, walking to your car to get to work and so forth, like, no extra sort of movement. And so gestational diabetes is a full-time job. If you don't know, after finding out I had gestational diabetes and, you know, adapting my lifestyle to that, they also told me that I had anemia of pregnancy and needed to get iron infusions. So I was going to get iron infusions, going to the maternal fetal medicine for, you know, the high risk doctor for the gestational diabetes, and also trying to limit movement because I'm at risk for preterm labor. So it was pretty much an average of 3 to 4 doctor's appointments every single week from week like 22-ish on. And that takes a toll on you. That's a lot of driving. That's a lot of sort of just being confined in a car, like stuck. I'm bouncing back and forth between work and doctor's appointments, and I'm trying to prove myself at work. I'm trying to prove that I can still be 100% and still give 100% to my body during this pregnancy, and the two battled it out, and it was just a really tough time. There was a lot on me in the moment, and it was tough. I really do love being pregnant, and I really loved that my body had the opportunity to grow a life, and I got to bond with Katherine throughout our pregnancy. I knew what she was feeling. I knew, when she wasn't in a good mood, believe it or not, I knew it through pregnancy. And so I'm super grateful. I had no idea that all those things could go wrong. And I had no idea the toll it was going to take on me. So in addition to my doctor's appointments at maternal fetal medicine for the gestational diabetes, in addition to my iron infusions for my anemia, I was also going to a chiropractor because she was breached. I was trying everything that I possibly could to get her to turn, so that on top of having such a tough pregnancy, I didn't also have to have a surgery, a C-section, to deliver her. That girl did not turn. So there's that. I spent so much money on the chiropractor. I was doing inverted exercises, just the whole bit, and she wouldn't turn. So that leads us to Katherine's birthday. She was born on March 10th via C-section due to breech presentation. Woo! Now, my birth story. So, around like February of 2020, Stephen got really sick and his oxygen was low. It was the sickest he had ever been in a really long time. And, we didn't know what was wrong with him, but they put him on like a breathing treatment and, he got better, but we didn't know at the time of February of 2020 what was lurking around the corner. So in hindsight, we think he had the you-know-what, but, we'll never know. So anyway, March 2020, we're excited. we're scheduled for a C-section because, like I said, my baby was breech, and we're excited. We know nothing about what we're about to walk into, but we know that our baby girl is about to be born, and that's just the best thing that could ever happen. So we go to the hospital as scheduled, and we're in the waiting area. My family's there, his family's there. They're all our family at this point, but you know, we're all there, and we're waiting for our daughter to be born. There were whispers in the hallways at the hospital. Things were off. Things seemed, you know, not that we had ever experienced it before, but things just seemed different from what the experience should be. At this point, the news is going, the news is buzzing. We know that there's something floating around and that people are getting really sick, but we don't know much. We don't know much at this point. My sister-in-law says that when she walked in to the hospital, one of the security guards was just getting a bunch of masks, and she said it was like the way they like fell, it was like an accordion shape, like just masks everywhere. So the hospital staff was nervous. Hospital staff was nervous, doing their absolute best not to let it show, but it was so clear that something was going on. We're still going through the motions, you know, this baby still has to be born. And while I'm in the surgery room, everything's happening, right? Everything's normal. And while Katherine's being delivered, we hear the nurse say, oh, the umbilical cord's wrapped around her foot. And that was the first time that like there was a little bit of a panic. That like they let us see. So she was sort of like shushed off. Katherine was fine. The umbilical cord being wrapped around her foot had no impact on her health at all. It was just the first time someone seemed nervous out loud. And so right after she was born, right after I got to have, you know, my moment with her, I became Mama Bear. I got so scared about what was floating around, and I just remember being so nervous. On top of that, Katherine cried so much. So now that I've had another baby to compare it to, like when babies are first born, they usually are so exhausted that they just sleep. They just sleep. And when they wake up, they're pissed and they're crying and they're mad. But Katherine cried. Katherine cried day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, and so on and so forth. She was just so upset. And I was like, Katherine knew. Katherine knew that something crazy was going on. So fast forward to maybe just day 2 in the hospital. The nurse comes in after having drawn some blood work and says, you're Rh negative, you need a RhoGAM shot. And I was like, you know what, I thought I was. But when I got my blood work done in my doctor's office, they said that my blood type was positive. And her face said it all. She didn't even need to say anything after that. Her face, she was so upset with someone. I don't know if she was upset with the doctor or if she was upset with the lab that the doctor sent the blood work to, but she was upset. So she like almost immediately walked out. And then maybe an hour later, my doctor walks in and tells me, you know, she just asked how I'm doing. She asked, you know, how I was feeling and if I needed asked if I needed anything. And I said, well, you know, the nurse did say that I'm Rh negative and need to get a RhoGAM shot. And she was like, oh, is that why they're looking at me? I think she said something like, is that why they're looking at me with like they want to bite my head off, or with claws? And I was like, I don't know, I guess. And so thankfully everything was okay. Thankfully Katherine was okay. Thankfully I was okay. But I should have gotten the RhoGAM shot during pregnancy and post-pregnancy. And I only got it post-pregnancy due to that error. That's mistake one. Next mistake is sort of uncovered after I go home. And I gotta look at my notes because the timeline is important. So Katherine was born on March 10th. March 24th, so 14 days later, March 24th was my first postpartum appointment, post C-section, mind you. Because at that point we were all well aware of what was going on in the world, and we knew what it was called, we knew what it was doing, we knew how dangerous it was. Because all that was going on, my doctor at the time was not seeing patients in office at all. Okay, that's what was told to me, that provider was not seeing patients in the office at all. So all visits, be it sick, well, postpartum, prenatal, all visits were virtual. Now I just had a C-section and I just had my RhoGAM shot, in which I should have gotten 2 doses of, and you still don't want to see me in office physically, right? That appointment was rescheduled. So now it's been 14 days and I haven't met with the doctor. I'm struggling with nursing. I'm trying everything. I'm seeing lactation specialists. I'm eating more. I'm drinking water. I have perfected her latch. Like, I'm doing all the things, and nursing is not working. Just not working. And it's been 14 days now postpartum, and I haven't talked to a doctor yet. It was rescheduled to just the following day. So the following day, still virtual. Now 15 days postpartum is 3 weeks. 2.5 weeks. And I let my provider know that I am still bleeding pretty heavily, and from what I knew about postpartum bleeding was that it varies from person to person, so not to expect one thing or another, but that the first week or so it should be the heaviest, and then it should start to taper off. So this is now 2.5 weeks, and it's still very, very heavy. So I was instructed just to wait it out. April 13th. So now this is a month and 3 days after Katherine's been born. April 13th, I sit down to eat breakfast, and I stand up and feel a heavy flow. So now this is a month later. My bleeding should be almost done, and I feel a very heavy flow. And I remember reaching out to a couple of my friends and asking them like what their bleeding was like, and everybody who I talked to said that at that point it was done, like done. So I'm like, all right, maybe I'm stressed out because nursing hasn't been working. Like, let me just, freshen up, change out my pads, start fresh. Within 10 minutes, I had soaked through another pad, and I'm telling Steven, like, yo, something's wrong. Something's wrong. I feel it. Like, I feel it. Something's really, really wrong. And he's like, all right, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I got a little dizzy. And I'm like, let me sit down for a second. I just got really, really dizzy. Like I'm feeling funny. I'm feeling I'm gonna pass out. So as soon as I laid down and was like super still and everything was still like I was so dizzy, I was like, all right, I need to go to the ER. But even after knowing that I needed to go to the ER, I'm like, let me call my doctor first. So I called my doctor and they said they would page her and that she would call me back. They called me and said, hey, did you hear back from the doctor yet? And I said, no. And they were like, okay, let's page her again. Waited again. And they were like, oh, she's dealing with an emergency right now. Like, she'll call you when she can. And I'm like, I gotta go to the ER. So I went to the ER and they did a transvaginal ultrasound. They did some blood work. They hooked me up to an IV. What else did they do? And they gave me a, nose swab for the test. They tell me at that time that they believe that I have retained placenta. They said, based on the ultrasound that we saw, this is what we think is going on. Let us call your doctor. So they call my doctor and she says, no, that's not it. It's probably her period because she's not breastfeeding. So they relay that message to me. And I say, well, I'm not breastfeeding because I don't want to. I've been trying this whole time and nothing's happening. And they're like, we think one thing and she thinks another thing. Like, go home and follow up with her in her office. So I go home, not better, but I go home and follow up with her in her office. It's not even her there, it's the technician. So the technician is performing another transvaginal ultrasound and we're just talking and she looks at the screen and she's like, I'm really not supposed to say, but I've done a lot of scans and this looks like retained placenta. And I'm like, okay. So she's like, I'm pretty sure that's what it is and you should be hearing from us really soon. I believe I waited a day or so and still heard nothing. So I called them to say like, hey, what's going on? And they said, oh yeah, we gotta schedule you for surgery. We gotta schedule you for surgery. And I said, okay, well, is it retained placenta? And she's like, oh, let me look. Yeah. Okay. What does that mean? Is this the answer to why I haven't been able to nurse because my body still thinks I'm pregnant? Is this the reason why I hemorrhaged and had to go to the ER? Is this the reason why my postpartum bleeding has never stopped? Like, no one talked me through. No one answered my questions. There was just no care in the treatment that I was getting. And it was just so frustrating because we are in a full, can I say the word? I know that like YouTube gets a little funny about this topic, but like we're in a full pandemic and I'm scared of everything because we're in this pandemic and you guys just are treating my life as if it's just not worth anything. No one's following up with their patients. No one's telling me what's wrong with me. There's judgment about me nursing and you didn't even think to correlate the two, like because of your error. Like, don't get me wrong, retained placenta can occur post C-section. It's just rare. It just really isn't something that happens that often. And my only conclusion is that my provider at the time was distracted and or scared herself, about everything that was going on in the world. But I just was not feeling good about being under their care. So April 13th was when I went to the ER. April 22nd was when I had my virtual appointment as the follow-up to the ER visit. April 24th is when I went to the office physically for a second transvaginal ultrasound. And then April 29th was when I had my follow-up surgical procedure to remove the placenta left in my body from my delivery March 10th. What? So by the grace of God, I'm here. By the grace of God, I lived. By the grace of God, I have been able to raise my daughter, and I've been able to be here and present with her and watch her grow, and I'm so grateful that I'm alive to see her most precious moments. But like I said, by the grace of God, because that doctor has nothing to do with my well-being. That doctor's care for me was so minimal, I'm still so mad that even though I thought I was ready to sit down to film this video, I just am boiling. And like I said in my postpartum must-haves video, like, use your intuition. If you feel like something's wrong, something's wrong. That's it. It's as simple as that. If you feel like something's wrong, it is. It is. And I felt like something was wrong. I was struggling with nursing and couldn't figure out why. But I didn't listen to myself. I literally put my care into the hands of this provider who showed me with their actions that they could not care less about me. And thank God, right? Thank God, because I almost didn't make it out of that. From March 10th, because something was wrong March 10th. So from March 10th to April 29th, I was bleeding out. That's my birth story. That's my birth story for Katherine. Yeah. It's just truly so crazy. Please like this video, give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel. I'm having so much fun here on YouTube, and I want to grow our community and do more videos like this and talk and chat. Comment down below what your thoughts are right now after watching this video. I'd love to talk to you down there. And yeah, see you guys next time.